Ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
On this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, expert cattlemen and leaders from Dow AgroSciences discuss the benefits of a strong forage and pasture management program.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen with host Kevin Oxner.
Hello and welcome to this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Oxner. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're sitting down with leaders from Dow AgroSciences as well as expert cattlemen to discuss forage management and why it's so important to cattlemen across the country. And joining me in the studio today are Dave Owens, Portfolio Marketing Leader with Dow AgroSciences. Pat Birch is also with Dow AgroSciences and is a field scientist for the organization. Jeff Smink, owner of Center of the Nation Cattle Company in Newell, South Dakota. And Glenn Benjamin, rancher from Simla, Colorado, in addition to being president of the Colorado Livestock Association. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk first of all about what forage management is. And Dave, I want to start with you. Can you just define forage management in your terms?
Sure, absolutely. When I think of it, it follows three pretty simple aspects. The first one is to know as much as you possibly can about your own forage enterprise. And this is probably the hardest thing for most cattlemen to grasp. I mean, they love cattlemen, they love cattle. They know everything there is to know about their particular breed, but a lot of times how to manage that forage is a little bit lacking. And there are literally hundreds of different forage enterprises across the U.S. If you think about down south, you've got folks that are raising Bermuda grass. If you move a little bit west and a little north, you get into fescue areas. And then finally, you get out into the Great Plains and you're into native grass species. You really need to know all the nuances of how that forage responds in order to manage it effectively. The second thing to do is really to set goals for yourself and follow up on them. If you think about that Bermuda grass manager down in the southeast, he might want to raise his cows but also provide some high-quality hay for like a neighboring horse farm. If they're doing that, then weed control is going to be critical. You don't want horse nettle making big old black splotches in the middle of your fine coastal Bermuda grass hay. As you move into fescue, you may want to plant some warm season grasses to kind of cover what we call the summer slump in the fescue belt. And then finally, if you get into the native range, you really need to understand what species you have and say, okay, do I want to improve my range condition over a period of time? And if so, what do I need to do from a management perspective to make that happen? And finally, the follow-up is really critical. And I tell folks to be aggressive in monitoring how their forage is responding to the grazing system that they have. If you take a look at our good friends down in Texas and Oklahoma last year, their pastures or their rangeland looked an awful lot like my hairline. Okay? They had a little bit of forage around some of the creeks and some of the ponds, some of the wetter areas, but up in the upland areas, absolutely nothing going on. So if their goal was to improve range condition, this drought has really set them back. And they really need to closely monitor how much weed and increased brush pressure they're getting this particular year, and then take action on that to keep themselves moving forward. So those three simple premises are really what I consider when I think about forage management.
The big question in your analogy is, will some spring showers bring back the hairline? That's my question.
Probably not the hairline, but Texas is greening up fairly well, so life is getting better down there.
Jeff, I want to turn to you. What do you see as some of the benefits of good forage management for cattlemen like yourself?
Well, we look at it as an insurance policy. The rest rotation system that we set up years ago was really designed to optimize our grass production. And I think in my area, where it's predominantly western wheatgrass, that the most important part of the grassland ecosystem is not necessarily what you see, but what you don't see. It's the root systems underground. And that resting a pasture for an entire year really allows those root systems to really be healthy and expand, allowing your grasses to be healthier then. And then the other aspect, of course, is the grazing. Our grassland ecosystems evolved under grazing pressures. So to be healthy, they need to be grazed and properly managed. So that's our general philosophy.
Very good. Glenn, you're a cattleman, but you also have a chance to talk to a lot of other cattlemen in your leadership role here in the state of Colorado. What's your perspective?
Well, forage is really the heart of my operation, and it is for many other cattlemen also, because with the increase in grain prices, keeping the cattle out on grass for as long as possible and getting as many pounds as possible is really critical these days. And in my operation, my goal is to graze my cattle year round. So I stockpile a lot of forage for winter grazing and try to keep those cattle out on the grass without having to feed a lot of extra protein or hay. So with the added pressures of yearling operations expanding, trying to get as much gain on grass as possible, this forage production and the amount of grass that you can grow in your pastures is just critical to keep it at a high level.
And tell me this, Pat, from your perspective, is this what you hear as you travel around and visit with other producers all across the country?
Well, most of my experience is in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, but in our area, I think there's a greater emphasis now on forage management than there has ever been. I think shrinking land bases are driving that, but as well as the grain prices. But there's more interest now in managing that resource to keep those cattle out there longer on the pasture and gain more from it.
Very good. Another thing to take into consideration when it comes to forage management is high corn prices. Forages have always been the foundation of a successful cattle program. Cattlemen to Cattlemen's Brad Bulla reports that they're becoming even more important as feed costs continue to rise.
For years, feed has been one of the largest single production expenses for cattle operations. But the high cost of grain has many producers rethinking how they do business.
Much of what we do in terms of the overall production system of this industry was driven by the availability of cheap concentrate feeds. And so, as a result, we've become a very grain-intensive industry. There's incentives now for this industry to look at doing things a little bit differently.
For the foreseeable future, there's more value in forage, and most cattle producers realize that a solid forage program is the key to having a profitable operation. The markets reward those who produce forage efficiently and use it to put pounds on marketable cattle. And good forage managers work every day to improve their grazing management and extend the grazing season.
For 40 or 50 years, our question in the industry is basically, how can we get cattle to eat more grain and in the process produce high-quality beef? I think for the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to spend a lot of time focused on the question of how can we produce that high-quality beef using the least amount of grain. I think we'll be trying to utilize more forage and putting emphasis on forage. We'll be looking at utilizing the forages we have more efficiently, more productively, but I think it may also in certain environments suggest that we have some interest in looking perhaps at some new forages or some new forage systems that would be complementary to this new economic environment. I think it's good if producers consciously recognize that there's a different environment. It will present enormous opportunities, particularly for anyone that has forage resources in this country. Those resources have more value now, and there's more flexibility on how to utilize them.
Many of the factors that influence the cattle market change from year to year. However, it looks like feed grain prices will remain inflated for the foreseeable future. This means the increased value of forage and forage management is a new fact of life for the beef industry.
I don't think today we can really envision where we might be able to go. I don't think we're going to go back to the kind of situation where we could afford to not utilize forage effectively. So I suspect for that reason alone that this is a permanent thing.
I'm Brad Bulla reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
You can find more information on the Dow AgroSciences line of range and pasture herbicides at rangeandpasture.com. So Dave, as someone who has a chance to work with producers all across the country, what are you hearing in terms of how these rising costs of corn and feed grains are impacting people's decision about forage management?
I tell you what, it's been very surprising over the last year or so to really watch attitudes about holding on to calves longer change. We took a tour with the American Forage and Grassland Council out in Louisville and went to southern Indiana, which is not necessarily, one of the meccas of cattle production. But the producer's ranch that we went and toured was a beautiful setup. Had lots of rotational grazing, and he had the capability to hold on to those calves for another 100 to 150 pounds of gain. And he said, that's money directly into my pocket. And with today's prices being what they are, that's very critical to folks. I think we're going to see quite a bit more of intensive forage management and folks really trying to garner some of that additional earnings from their particular herds.
Jeff, from a real-world perspective, again, grass has always been the foundation of your operation. How have these changes in forage prices and the market in general impacted your decision-making?
That's interesting. A good friend of mine has said that when he used to drive around the country, he would look at other people's livestock and their cattle and look at how well they were doing. But now when he drives around the country, he looks at the grass and the grassland and how that looks. And I think in general, the industry is moving that way, where before, they're not minimizing cattle genetics at all, but maybe the grassland production is coming up to the same level as what the cattle production is. So I think that's the direction that our industry is moving.
We're grass farmers first, aren't we?
That's right. That's right.
And Glenn, from your perspective, what have these increased forage and feed grain prices meant in your operation?
Well, actually, they haven't changed a lot of what of my management styles, because we've always relied strictly on a grass. That's kind of our main operation is grass production, turning that into beef. And so we do keep a lot of our calves over for yearlings, and so it's important that we have enough grass available for them to keep them going through until middle of August, 1st of September the following year. But I work a lot with the NRCS, the local conservation districts, to put grazing systems into place, doing a lot of more fencing and those type of things. But also it's important for the cattle, but it's also important for the wildlife. And I think that, with these, anything we can do to improve our grasses and is just good for the whole ecosystem.
Dave, from Dow AgroSciences' perspective, how do you perceive this relative to the long term? Is this a long-term trend, or do you think this is a short-term blip?
Absolutely. No, this is a very long-term blip. A long-term trend. As we look at it, we're going to see a lot more forage being raised in the east. Much more efficient methodologies. There's some folks that say that we've lost as many as 4 million acres of good pasture land over the last year, mainly to some of the commodity crops like corn and soybeans, CRP coming out of production and going into grain. And so as you look at losing that amount of grass, it's going to be absolutely critical that we produce the rest of those acres and utilize them in a very efficient manner. That's going to mean cross-fencing. That's going to mean weed and brush control is going to become ever more critical. And then as you move out into the western areas, we've had a tremendous encroachment of noxious weeds in this particular area. And it's absolutely critical that to bring those acres back into productivity, not only, as Kevin said, for the cattle, but also for a lot of the wildlife and other multiple uses that we get off of those acres, that we get a handle on those noxious weeds. And so we see that as being a long-term trend as well, to try to get in and really reclaim some of those acres that we've lost.
We're going to have to think totally differently about it. Pat, from your perspective, as you think about how you would recommend producers optimizing the utilization of forage in their operation, what would you recommend?
Well, oftentimes the calls that we get someone is in a bad situation. They may have a bad weed problem, and that's the reason that we may be contacted. But they really need to look at it more in a holistic manner and trying to integrate this, site fertility and grazing management and weed control so that there's not really a silver bullet there, but there is a holistic approach to managing that land. And so we try to get people away from thinking of just kind of addressing one problem, but understand how they got into that problem.
Very good. Glenn, from your perspective, how does increasing the amount of forage you're able to grow in your operation benefit your operation?
Well, anytime we can grow more grass, we can raise more pounds of beef, which in turn improves our bottom line. So it's really important that we keep our pasture lands in good shape, that we don't let these noxious weeds get out of hand. So we try to monitor that very closely. We spray every spring. We spend a lot of time on four-wheelers running around and spraying weeds. And but anytime that we can make our grasses better, it makes our cattle better, and it makes our bank accounts bigger.
This is a great discussion, guys, and I'm anxious to pick it up after break. Ahead on this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, the expert panelists provide tips on how beef cattle producers can make pastures and rangelands more productive. Plus, Jeff Smink talks about his Environmental Stewardship Award and shares how managing the land helps improve his overall profitability.
You're watching NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen on RFD TV.
Grow more low-cost forage and improve grazing access by clearing out weeds and brush with these Dow AgroSciences herbicides. See your Dow AgroSciences representative or visit rangeandpasture.com.
I'm looking forward to having Vista Once back. We weren't able to find an equivalent product.
I think our practice will be very quick to adopt Vista when it comes back.
All of my veterinary colleagues have all talked about the product coming back.
We're glad to have Vista back in the product line.
Cattlemen that we work with will be glad to have the product.
We have a lot of producers that are excited about it coming back.
Yeah, can I recommend Vista Once? Yeah, that's going to go right back in the cooler, and it goes right back in the calves.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Dan Thompson from Doc Talk. Each week on Doc Talk, we'll be discussing important issues such as livestock management and welfare, important and new agricultural research, and how to keep our food supply safe. My guests will include nationally and internationally known veterinarians and animal scientists. So if you farm, ranch, or eat, you'll find something of interest in every single episode. Watch Doc Talk every Monday on RFD TV at 4:30 p.m. or online at doctalktv.com.
John Deere K-Series loaders. You asked for a machine beefy enough to handle your harsh work environment, and John Deere delivered. Axle coolers, reversing fans, and a dual hydraulic differential lock keep your machine productive for years to come. And with dozens of options, this loader is king of the cattle business. Your dealer can spec a K-Series loader that's just right for you. See your dealer today.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. This week, we're sitting down with experts from Dow AgroSciences, as well as some fellow cattlemen, to talk about the importance of forage management. We've had a great discussion so far, and Pat, I want to pick it up with you. Back us up a step. Why do weeds and brush encroach in our pastures in the first place?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, in many cases, it's just natural succession. It's going to happen. It's going to start to convert. In my part of the world, that's going to try to convert back to trees. And so brush is going to move in. But in many cases, too, it's a result of some other problem with management, either grazing management, fertility, and something is driving that. And oftentimes, coming out of a drought is a time when, if the rains are timed right, you're going to get that first flush is going to be weeds.
Mm-hmm. And Glenn, have you always had a program to control weeds in your operation?
Yes, we have. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of weeds in our native pastures, but noxious weeds, when I was a little kid, we'd go out with my dad and spray Canada thistle and those type of weeds. Now we've got some other noxious weeds that have moved into our area, maybe some leafy spurge or diffuse knapweed. Of course, the thistles are still there, but we have always had a program in place to make sure that these weeds stay under control.
Jeff, I know environmental stewardship is near and dear to your heart, like so many other cattlemen. Does that impact how you control and treat weeds and brush?
Sure, it does, for sure. Other than a few areas of cheatgrass or Japanese brome, we really don't have a weed problem on our place. And I think our grazing management plan is designed specifically to keep the weeds out. If you have a healthy grassland ecosystem, it's hard for those annuals to move in. So it's really not something that we have to deal with at this time.
So, Pat, once I've identified that I've got a weed or a brush problem in my pasture land, how do I go about selecting the right product for the job?
Well, the right product for the job is just trying to integrate your management plans or what your strategies are as far as what are you managing for. If it's a mix or if it's a grass, then there are options where there are grass-selective herbicides. If you have an integration of, say, a legume in some parts of the country, then there may be some strategy to where you have to use the herbicide to control the weeds and then plan on getting that legume back at a later date. But it's more integrating it with the particular weed problem, doing an assessment of that weed pressure that's out there, and then what needs to coincide with those other portions, the fertility management, the grazing management, that's going to get the most value out of that.
Dave, Dow AgroScience has a rich history of bringing great products to the market and spent a lot of money in research and development. I'd be interested to know what are some of the latest molecules you're working with or maybe we'll be seeing here shortly.
Yeah, actually we've are in the process of really kind of rounding out our aminopyrrolid brand of products. Chaparral was introduced a couple of years ago and has been a great hit. And a brand new one that we've launched this year is called Sendero. And it is an aminopyrrolid-based product, and it is specifically targeted at mesquite. And we used to have Remedy and Reclaim, and that's been the industry standard for about 25 years. And now Sendero has come along, and we are getting 10 to 15% more root kill per acre compared to the old standard, and it's about 40% more consistent. So we've really tightened up the control on mesquite, and folks are really going to be excited about that down in that Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico area.
Absolutely, yeah. Mesquite's great on the barbecue grill, not so good in the pastures. Pat, I would ask you, what should folks keep in mind when they go to treat mesquite?
Yeah, mesquite is one of the brush species that has been researched intensely, and Texas A&M has done a fabulous job of honing in on that timing. And it basically comes down to when is that leaf mature? When is the foliage mature and the growth stop? So that now the carbohydrates are being, the leaf is becoming a source rather than a sink. And so it's sending carbohydrates to that root system. That's when you want to make your application.
Well, this is a great discussion, gentlemen, and helpful for any of us who are trying to control weeds and maximize forage in our own operations. We need to take another break, but up next, we'll have a demonstration right here in the studio, and we'll talk about the proper sprayers you should use to help keep those weeds under control. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Grow more low-cost forage and improve grazing access by clearing out weeds and brush with these Dow AgroSciences herbicides. See your Dow AgroSciences representative or visit rangeandpasture.com.
Draxxin, clearly cattlemen's #1 choice to fight BRD. Here's why.
Nothing is more depressing in a stalker business as the doctor and doctor. And you still have your chronics, you still have your death loss. And with Draxxin, we just found out that, especially with microplasts, you just had to be there to see the results.
And the evidence backs up what most cattlemen already know. Draxxin cuts chronics and mortalities by 70%. So talk to your veterinarian and check the online calculator at Draxxin.com. You'll see, nothing gives you more for your money when you're fighting BRD.
Just a great antibiotic.
Very, very effective. Don't let the price tag scare you.
It's a no-brainer. You just use it.
Do not use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older. Do not use in calves to be processed for veal. Draxxin has a pre-slaughter withdrawal time of 18 days. Please visit Draxxin.com or call 1-888-DRAXXIN for more information.
Head to Denver, Colorado and join cattlemen from across the country for the 2012 Cattle Industry Summer Conference. This is your chance to meet with industry leadership and fellow cattlemen on current trends and initiatives while also making valuable contacts. Registered attendees will also have access to hot topics at the Issues Forums. Join us for the 2012 Cattle Industry Summer Conference, July 25th to the 28th in Denver, Colorado. Visit beefusa.org for more information.
Welcome back. Many people think that treating pastures is a big job that takes a lot of big equipment. But with prevention being more important than ever before, smaller equipment has become increasingly popular. This type of equipment includes ATV rigs, hand sprayers, and backpack sprayers as well. We have Pat Birch, field scientist with Dow AgroSciences, with us today. And Pat, why don't you just tell us a little bit about when it's most appropriate to use this type of equipment, and more importantly, how it fits into an overall rangeland and pasture improvement program?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I think the first place to start is when the job is small.
Okay.
When the job is small, it's usually for weed spraying. It may be just patchiness out in a pasture, and you can use a backpack to make that application to spots where you need to treat.
Sure.
Now, if you want to advance to the next level, go to a broadcast treatment, then it's probably more appropriate to start to look at an ATV or even a larger broadcast rig.
You bet. Well, tell us, you've got a couple of pieces of equipment here. First of all, talk to us a little bit about this backpack sprayer and where this is most appropriate.
All right. Now, this backpack sprayer is equipped with the equipment that comes with the backpack.
Yeah.
It's the spray wand that comes with it. And this is, like I said, it's appropriate for spraying small patches of weeds. Mm-hmm. It's also appropriate for spraying brush as a foliar treatment.
Sure.
It does a real nice job. You can make your application right to the crown of brush species, okay, or to the to weeds that are present in patches.
Sure. Very good.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is now there's another transition to a different application technique, and that would be an individual plant treatment as a low-volume basal. Now, what I was talking about with the weed spraying and with the foliar spraying of the brush is that's a water-based application. Sure. So you mix the herbicide in water and you make the application to foliage. Now, if you were going to do a basal application, that's an application to the base of the tree. And okay, we can look at our model, our model here of a tree, and whereas the application for foliar is on the foliage as it says, here we're making the application to the base of the tree. So
gotcha,
the lower 12 to 15 inches of the stem at the ground line up is where you're making the application.
I see.
Now, if you're using the standard backpack wand that comes with it, there's two problems with it. Number one is it's quite flexible. This being a plastic, it does tend to flex as you try to reach into, say, a clump, like a rose clump. But the other problem is there's a lot of fluid in here, and the amount of fluid in here would treat several stems.
Oh.
The action or the shutoff is here in the handle.
I see.
So if you shut it off at this point, this fluid can come out by gravity because you've got the wand. You're going to waste the product. It's going to be a poor stewardship of the product. Now, when I go to an application as a basal application, there are check valves that you can put in the tip that will shut off at a certain pressure. But still, the most efficient way to do it, because it's a more rigid application tool, is to use this low volume wand.
I see.
This, however, is a little bit pricey.
Sure.
It's a little bit more expensive, but it will last a very long time.
Yeah.
Here, the action here is a cord that runs up to the shutoff is at the tip.
I see.
So now the tip is where the product is controlled. If I close or release the valve or release the handle, it'll shut it off here, and you won't get that dripping problem.
Good. Very good.
We also use an adjustable cone spray tip for basal application, so we can adjust the pattern, whether it's a wide stem that we're treating or narrow. We can adjust that pattern to fit to that, and so we're not wasting product again because we're making the application just to the stem that we want to treat.
So right equipment for the right product that you're spraying and the right plant that you're spraying. Another question I have, and one that is easy to struggle with, so you go to fill up a sprayer like this, and all the directions are based on per acre treatment. So how do I go about trying to calibrate and figure out how much product I need to put in this sprayer for some hand spraying?
That's a good question, and we get that all the time. If you were spraying weeds, and so you're spraying a patchy problem of weeds in a pasture, then you would want to calibrate first. Now, many people don't want to go through the hassle. They feel like there's a hassle there of calibrating a piece of equipment, but you're more calibrating not only the equipment, you're calibrating the applicator. And so what we would do is measure out an area, and we have great guides on our website for that. You would measure out a set area, and then you would fill the backpack with a known amount of water, make an application to that whole area the way you would if you had the herbicide in it, and then you can calculate based on that fixed area how much you're applying on a per acre basis.
Very good.
Then you mix your herbicide in proportion in your backpack.
It makes a lot of sense. And I notice, obviously, you have a full line of products that we've been talking about, but you have both a granular dry product as well as a liquid product. Any differences that we need to keep in mind there? Well,
the big difference is how you measure the product that's going into the backpack. We do have guides on how many milliliters or how much volume for each for the liquid formulations. And then when we get to the dry formulation, oftentimes we'll equate a weight to say something like a teaspoon, something easy for someone to measure. And they can know that if they need a certain number of grams or ounces of product, then it would be a certain number of teaspoons. That would go into the backpack once you know how much the backpack applicator is applying.
Very good. Any other tips or hints before we go out and start controlling our weed pressures?
Yeah. Well, if you have a backpack, it's a good idea to have one dedicated to water-based application.
Okay.
So the weed spraying, the foliar spraying for the brush. But if you're going to make basal applications, which is a great application technique because you can do it any time of year. Here, you're restricted to the growing season with the water-based products. And here, you can apply it any time there's not snow preventing the application to the base or the stem is not wet. So you're making the application with an oil. Use a separate backpack. Because if you start to put an oil in there and there's some residue of water from when you clean the equipment out, then you'll get a milky white color as it creates an emulsion from that oil. So it's much better to keep a dedicated piece of equipment for basal application and one dedicated for foliar application. Now, that being said, the backpack for basal application should be equipped with oil-resistant seals. They're normally, the brand is Viton. And if it has Viton seals, then it's going to be able to handle the oils that you would use as a basal application.
That's very good. Well, this has been very, very helpful and informative discussion. I appreciate that, Pat. For more information on backpack sprayers or the Dow line of range and pasture herbicides, visit rangeandpasture.com or cattlemenandcattlemen.org. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ever wonder where the beef checkoff dollar goes and what it buys? The Federation of State Beef Councils is made up of the 45 qualified state beef councils that collect the $1 per head beef checkoff. Each council keeps control of 50 cents and sends 50 cents to the Cattlemen's Beef Board for use in national beef checkoff programs. Many states also choose to send a portion of their share to the Federation to expand national and international efforts. As a division of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the Federation of State Beef Councils works to support an effective state and national partnership, helping to increase beef demand through research, promotion, and education. Because producers themselves direct these programs, your beef checkoff dollars are in good hands. Learn more about the Federation of State Beef Councils by visiting beefusa.org.
They're out there, lurking on your pasture, just waiting to infect your cattle as they graze. Cattle worms cost you money, but a Safeguard strategic deworming program allows you to deworm your cattle and lower worm burdens on your pasture, resulting in improved pregnancy rates and heavier calf weights. Plus, there's a Safeguard form for every operation. So start killing parasites where they lurk. Talk to your animal health provider today about a Safeguard strategic dewormer program. Safeguard. Think strategically. Act decisively.
No storm is too powerful for new Purina Wind and Rain Storm Minerals, formulated with ultimate weather resistance. That means more minerals in the feeder and available to your cattle. Wind and Rain Storm Minerals provide more consistent intake and balanced mineral nutrition to optimize herd health and breedback rates. See the difference at your local Purina dealer or visit cattlenutrition.com. Wind and Rain Storm Minerals, another way Purina is building better cattle.
Welcome back. We often hear cattlemen say that if you take care of the land, it will take care of your cattle. And that's really what this business is all about. Taking care of the land, keeping ranching families sustainable, and helping to feed a hungry world. Dow AgroSciences has recognized the best of the best as a longtime sponsor of the Environmental Stewardship Award Program. And Dave, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about the Environmental Stewardship Award Program.
Well, it's the 21st anniversary of the award. It's been around for quite a while now. And it really celebrates the tie that the cattlemen have to the land that they steward. And that is a wonderful thing to celebrate, and we hope to be involved with this for many more years.
Well, I wanted to ask you, so why does Dow support it, and why do you think it's so important to recognize those people who are doing a real good job at environmental stewardship?
Well, it's a critical story that the public needs to hear about the industry. They always hear some of the negative things that go on, and we felt it was absolutely critical that they hear the good side of cattle production. Now, for the individual recipients, it's always great to hear you've done a good job. You know, when my 14-year-old mows the lawn and it looks good, I tell him, you did a good job. Yeah. And it also helps to serve as an inspiration for other cattlemen. They can look at some of these families and go, you know what, I can do just a little bit more, and that can be me as well. So that's why we like to be involved.
Very good. We're fortunate to have Jeff Smink here in the studio with us. He's one of this year's regional winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Scott Hoke recently had the chance to visit Jeff's operation in South Dakota to learn more about his stewardship practices.
Stretching across more than 7,000 acres, Center of the Nation Cattle Company is located just outside Newell, South Dakota. Their one-of-a-kind name comes from their unique geographic location.
Our place had the old Geographic Center of the Nation monument located on it, and that was with the addition of Alaska and Hawaii as states. And so with that monument on our place, we just decided to name our operation Center of the Nation Cattle Company.
It's Jeff's land around that, and that's where we came up with, they called that the Center of the Nation Butte, Center of the Nation Park, and that's where we came up with Center of the Nation Ranch.
The Smink family has a legacy of stewardship that goes back more than a century. Jeff is the fourth generation on the family ranch. Today, he works the land with help from his wife, Kim, and his parents, Steve and Kay. The family realized early on that improving the health of the soil and grass must be top priority to produce the highest quality beef.
I manage grass. You can have the best genetics in your cattle herd in the whole nation, but if you do not have grass, you can't raise any cattle on your place.
Stewardship is to build it up and make it better, and that's what we've been trying to do.
I believe cattle and a good, clean environment go together. I really think to manage these grasslands properly, they need to be grazed, and cattle are the best way, in my mind, to do it.
With 250 cow-calf pairs, their grazing plan was designed not only to benefit the cattle, but also birds. Jeff believes bird life can be a good indicator of range conditions and quality.
We're using birds as indicator species. I went to a Rocky Mountain Bird Observatory seminar a few years back, and just introduced me to the types of birds that we should be seeing out here.
Although green and lush now, this area of South Dakota is prone to drought, so the Smink family has worked hard to manage stocking rates and to make sure cattle always have access to water.
We put in water lines and water tanks, which kind of it helps the pasture in that you can control your grazing more. You have water available, better water available, so cattle aren't staying right around the dams. You've got the water tanks. It's just better for the livestock. It spreads it out so they're not overgrazing in certain areas.
Always looking to adopt innovative conservation methods, the Smink family is also willing to share what they've learned with producers across the region.
For me, it's very important to share what I've learned, because that's how I started learning things, was going to seminars and going on ranch tours. I mean, it's a lifetime deal. I don't think you ever know enough.
Through the years, the Sminks have worked hard to protect their resources while maintaining a sustainable operation to ensure their family ranch is around for generations to come.
It's a family organization, been going for so many years, and there's emotion tied up to it, and you're tied to the land, and you want to see that continue.
My hope for the future is that we can keep this ranch going, and that our children will one day be able to walk on this land with their children.
I'm trying not to just look for the next generation for my kids. I'm trying to focus 3 or 4 generations down the line. So I'm really trying to focus for the next several generations. And hopefully, if my kids want to come back, hopefully we have a viable operation that they can come back to with lots of grass.
What a great story. Jeff, tell us a little bit about how you first got involved in the ESAP program.
Well, the stewardship program is a program that I've heard about for quite a few years, and always greatly admired the families that were involved in this or nominated for it. And then basically South Dakota Cattlemen's nominated me a couple years ago, and then we were fortunate enough to receive the regional award.
Well, it's got to be a huge, huge honor for you and your family. What has it meant to your family to be recognized as one of the regional winners?
Well, that's exactly right. It's just a huge honor, and just to be a part of such a important program is just it's just been phenomenal.
Why do you think this program or programs like this is so important to the cattle industry? And secondly, what would you say to other folks at home who may be like you relative to the Environmental Stewardship Award and some of these practices?
You know, I think the general public doesn't hear from us enough. I mean, we are the true environmentalists, and unfortunately they hear way too often from the extremist activist groups that have agendas that are against us. So I think we really need to start telling our story and let people know that we are here doing the right thing, protecting the environment for everybody. And I think it's vitally important to our industry to continue. So I would encourage everybody to get involved.
Well, congratulations again to you and your family. You're a wonderful, wonderful representative of our industry.
Well, thank you very much.
For more information on the Environmental Stewardship Award Program, visit our website at cattlementocattlemen.org. And we'll be right back.
It's the official monthly publication of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. The National Cattleman is produced exclusively for NCBA members and includes coverage of the news and events affecting our industry. From Capitol Hill to the far side of cattle country, the National Cattleman provides information NCBA members need. Every issue includes market analysis, feature stories, and practical management tips. Start receiving your copy of The National Cattleman. Call 866-USA-BEEF or go online to beefusa.org and join today.
Assuring beef quality begins with dedicated people such as Phoebe Bittler, a dairy producer, and Jim Warren, a cattle auction market owner. Both are winners of the Beef Checkoff-funded National Beef Quality Assurance Award, and both recognize the need for the entire industry to focus on beef quality.
We've tried to put our best foot forward and try to see that the product that we send out of this country is the most wholesome, safest, best product that anybody could have anywhere. And to be complimented for that effort is an amazing experience.
It's all important, and I think there's some really good protocols laid out in the Beef Quality Assurance Program that will help producers to do the best job that they can do.
Producers across the nation have embraced the BQA program because they're committed to producing the world's best beef. To find out how you can compete for the BQA National Awards, visit the website bqa.org.
To stay up to date on beef industry news and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, check out beefusa.org. You'll find news on both the Federation of State Beef Councils and the work of NCBA on Capitol Hill. Plus, link to NCBA programs like the blog, Beltway Beef, updates on the Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show, and the latest from NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Connect today at beefusa.org.
Let's face it, you don't think a lot about your trailer hitch. You use it and forget it. We understand. But at B&W, we think about it. Short nights, long hauls, never-ending chores. The unthinkable. We think about it all, so you don't have to. B&W. Trusted.
70% of consumers want to know where their food comes from, and how can we ignore them? IMI Global offers third-party audited source and age verification essential for export markets and specialty markets like natural, organic, omnivoric, Eskimo, or possibly recovering vegan certified. For quality and age producers, to the big boys, any cattleman who wants to expand his market, you're not just buying this green ear tag, you're buying peace of mind. IMIglobal.com. The week before Christmas, the farmer announced to the animals that he would not be giving them the traditional cheese and sausage box. The pig was very relieved. "We'll draw names," he said. On Christmas morning, the gifts were exchanged. The buzzard had drawn the possum, and he gave him a can of fluorescent paint and a backpack with reflector tape. That way, the buzzard explained, the cars will see you crossing in time to swerve, and if they don't, it'll be easier for me to spot you when you're flat out on the highway. The dog presented the cat with a gift certificate to be spayed. She reciprocated by giving the dog a toy flea circus. Well, by some coincidence, the sheep had all drawn each other, and each gave the other a picture of a sheep. Some thought it was a mirror. Well, the rooster thought it would be a great joke to give the mouse a piece of cheese in a trap. But the mouse had already arranged for the rooster to visit the famous poultry bed and breakfast at the Campbell Chicken Noodle Soup Museum. It included a room with a stew. Sorry. There was great excitement between the goat and the mare. The goat had always envied the mare's magnificent tail, so she had the farmer clip it, and the birds wove it into a beautiful hairpiece. And the goat put it high up on his pole between his horns. It made him look like a debutante at her cotillion party in Lubbock, Texas when I was a kid. The cow offered to rub the coyote's back, and it went okay until he said, "A little more to the right." She broke his tail. It healed crooked, and now when he wags it, he looks like a flagman on an aircraft carrier. At the end of the evening, the farmer and his wife were given a rousing Christmas toast by their barnyard employees. They'd all chipped in, pardon the pun, and bought him a book autographed by all their cloven-hoofed and feathered edible animal friends entitled The Vegetarian Cookbook, or How to Get the Most Out of a Tuber During the Holidays. The sweet potato was so pleased. This is Baxter Black. Merry Christmas from all of us out there.
Thanks, Baxter, for that wisdom. We spent the last hour discussing forage management, and now I'd like to get some final thoughts from our panelists. Glenn, let's start with you.
Well, I think one of the most important things that a producer can do on their farm and ranch is to make sure that they keep their noxious weeds under control. They can spread like wildfire, and yet they're just as easy to extinguish at the first and get these bad weeds under control, make sure that they are no longer in your operation and in your grass. And I would just encourage everyone to make sure that they manage these weeds to the best of their ability.
Take a real proactive approach.
Yes.
Jeff, what would you share?
I guess my thoughting words of wisdom would be to develop a grazing plan for your operation and then to stick with that plan. Mm-hmm. It's hard to avoid the temptations of increasing your stocking rates, especially when inputs and expenses for operating are continually rising. But I think if you stick with that plan over the long haul, you will be more profitable and be able to stay in the business.
That's what I call sustainability. Pat, what would you share?
Just said, forage management, it's an integrated approach, whether it's the tools that we use or the integration of the fertility, the site productivity, everything coming together to make a good, solid forage product.
And Dave, what would you tell our audience?
I'd echo exactly what these three just said. You know, learn everything you possibly can about your forage production system that's native to your area. Get out there and set good goals for yourselves and be aggressive about following up and making sure that those goals are working for you.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights, and thank you for your great sponsorship of our show.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
Well, you can get more information on Dow AgroSciences by visiting our website at cattlemen-to-cattlemen.org. And be sure to join us next week. We'll sit down with the experts from Land O'Lakes Purina Feed to discuss the importance of a proper mineral nutrition program. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We'll see you right back here next week on RFD TV.